The story of the Good Samaritan. What if I tell you that the story of the Good Samaritan is like no other? What if I tell you that it reveals the most intricate details about the nature of our characters? What if I tell you that the story that Jesus was telling us was meant to cut across centuries of generational curses and cultural dominion? Could there have been more that Jesus was telling us that we seemed to have missed? Today I want to share a special message about the mysteries behind the story of the Good Samaritan. Samaria was the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel. In the days of Christ, the relationship between the Jews and the Samaritans was strained because of deep-rooted prejudice. After the Assyrians conquered Samaria, they resettled in that land with foreigners. The foreigners also brought pagan gods, and the Jews accused the Samaritans of idolatry, straying away from Yahweh, and considered them a mongrel race. Now you can imagine the racial and intercultural tensions that were building between the Israelites and the Samaritans. In the Talmud, a central post-exilic religious text of rabbinic Judaism, the Samaritans are called Kothians, naming them as those who were brought from Media and Persia after the Assyrian captivity. You could say Kothian is a term of, it's a low-key term that sort of calls the Samaritans as idolaters. Kind of like the typical 21st century K-word or the N-word used to derogate black people. So Samaritans obviously faced a lot of discrimination that they had to deal with. Now that we know a little bit of the background about why Jesus specifically used a Samaritan as a hero of this story, that gives us a better idea of what Jesus was trying to emphasize, but most importantly, to who he was telling the story to. I'm pretty sure when Jesus used that example, he knew exactly what he was trying to stir up a little bit. The first example in the story of the first Samaritan was someone considered to be of a high degree in the cultural orientation of the believers, one who possesses a degree of holiness fitting to approach the holy space of the sanctuary and its altar. You would think that this is someone who knows a lot about the laws, educated, and therefore should be a model citizen. But no, Jesus says he turned away. The second example is a Levite. The contrast between the two is that priestly theology is shown in the holiness code of conduct, mostly seen in Leviticus chapter 17 to 26. The Levite priesthood is said to exert a great influence over the book of Ezekiel, mostly Ezekiel chapter 34, and its vision of a purified priesthood and a restored temple. So this second man is a descendant of a tribe that represented a form of legalism. So he should know all the right passages and forms of behavior that then inform the community's way of living, right? Therefore, does he? Nope, it doesn't help. He simply turns away. But the third example Jesus uses is a Samaritan, a member of society which is considered to be uneducated or uncouth in the proper sacrilegious ways of Israel. Outcast, in other words, he's the brother that they wish they could just build a wall so he could stay on the other side with his kind. But Jesus says he felt sorry for the man. Compassion. There are 4 series of things that I would like to highlight that we can learn a great deal from this man. And the first one of those things is compassion. If we do not have compassion, we will not feel the need to identify, let alone to help their needs. And in Psalms 145, the Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, but rich in love. Lamentations chapter 3 verse 22. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. You would think these are writings that the two previous travelers would have been experts in, but sadly they were experts in those writings, but just couldn't show it where it counted the most. Now, the second thing that I would like us to highlight is to be present. You see, he didn't ask the Samaritan who he was, where he comes from, what happened to him. I'm sure those were conversations which were relevant at some stage, but they were not the determining factors of being the first responder in active duty. When we are present in people's lives, we're not concerned with their identities, we are rather concerned with their well-being. For the reality of the present to make sense, we don't have to drag the past in order to make sense of our present involvement in other people's suffering. To be present means the past is irrelevant. The Samaritan's presence meant to put himself into the traveler's shoes. The third thing that I would like to highlight is resourcefulness. The Samaritan used his resources to treat the man's wound. Bear in mind that this isn't a doctor, nor does he even have a medical aid kit with him. We can only imagine what he used to wrap the man with. He could have torn a piece of his garment and used it as a bandage because he didn't know what to expect along the way anyway. But he used what had to assist the situation. He wasn't rich or regarded as a model citizen, but he was resourceful in his own capacity. No doubt that after putting him in his animal, he had to walk while the wounded was carried through the journey. Resourcefulness. The fourth thing that I would like to highlight is the extra mile. We normally hear this term a lot, but when I think about it, this actually means, as I realize, the only person who can confirm whether what you're doing is enough to help them or not is the one that is being helped. And in this case, there was no dialogue between the two, or so you realize that the man must have been so badly injured that he was unable to make conscious decisions at the time. But the Samaritan had to make decisions on his behalf by assessing the condition and putting himself in the man's shoes. Perhaps that's the missing ingredient in all of this. How do we see ourselves in other people's sufferings? There's always two sides, to turn away or to be present. We all know we can see the videos of what's happening all around us, what's happening in America, what's happening through our neighbors' lives, what's happening in our communities. But if Jesus was to use our modern day sufferings as an illustration of a generation that preaches unconditional love but chooses to conveniently turn away, between the priest, the Levite, and the Samaritan, which of the three do you think we would be? Which of the three travelers would you be? In verse number 27, Jesus had answered just previously, you ought to love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's one of the greatest commandments. In Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17, learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fearless, plead the case of the widow. We don't need to care what a person looks like, which race or culture they're from, in order to recognize that they don't deserve to be stripped of their dignity and humanity. All we need to be is a good Samaritan. Interesting that the Samaritan was both the discriminated hero and the privileged altogether. One thing we know for sure is he wasn't afraid of sacrificing his comfort and privileges for the sake of those who need them the most. There's a quote that I came across yesterday. Everyone is a saint when they're judging someone else's sin. We should know by now that God reveals himself to people through their suffering. It's easier to turn a blind eye than to see what is typically hidden from the naked eye. Blessed are those whose thoughts are pure. They will see God. But how do you see God when you're so used to turning a blind eye? I have no doubt that whatever battles that we're facing are spiritual warfare. There are principalities in heavenly places seeking dominion over the other. Now, I know personally that knowing Jesus is a privilege, but we're not meant to be content with this kind of a privilege. We're meant to use it for the benefit of ourselves and those who need it the most. If after watching this video you still feel the need to not reach out and acknowledge the suffering of others, especially brothers and sisters in Christ, then I don't know what else to say. Then again, maybe silence is the only thing that we have in common. Please like and share this message. Share it with your friends, share it with your families, share it in your personal groups. Thank you for watching. Do like, do subscribe, leave a comment, let's engage. I'd like to really hear what you guys think, and I would love to get your feedback. This is the Jesus culture, where it's all about truth over tradition. Get cultured.